Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to make your own freeform wire wrapped pendant using a cabochon and square and half round wire. So let's get started. This wrapping technique can be used on a variety of different sizes and shapes as well as thicknesses of stone, but the materials will more or less stay the same. It can be done with an 18 gauge round wire, but for this video I'm using 18 gauge square because I really like the way that it looks and behaves. Just about all the wire that I use is from parawire.com. It's enameled copper core, but I've found of all the wires on the market that I've used, their non-tarnish coating really holds up, both to the wear and like the abuse of making it, like it holds up to hammering pretty well, like all sorts of stuff, but also I have pieces that I've worn almost daily for about 8 years, and I have very acidic skin, and that enamel still really holds up. So I highly recommend it. You know, beyond just getting like sterling silver or gold filled or argentinium or, you know, any of these you know, alloys that are available out on the market. Because also what I've found that makes Parawire so special is they do carry the shaped wires in the enameled copper. So I'm using the 18 gauge square, and then I'm also using an 18 gauge half round, which whether you use the square or round, I do recommend branching out and investing into a little bit of half round wire, just because it's phenomenal for binding other wires together. So we're going to start with finding the perimeter measurement of our stone. And you could do this a variety of different ways, like lay it out on a piece of tape, like wrap a piece of tape around it, and then, but I just like to use some scrap wire, and I give myself about 1 centimeter of overlap. And I just kind of shape it around that edge there, and then straighten it back out. And it looks like this is about 4.5 inches around. So I'm going to give myself a full 12 inches of wire to work with. And you can determine using the thickness of the stone that I am going to use 4 wires, because you can see here on the side it's about 2 wires thick. And so I want 2 wires edging it, and then a wire that will hold on the front and a wire that will hold on the back. If this were a thinner stone, I would only use 3 wires, and if it were a thicker stone, I could use 5 or more. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out 4 12-inch lengths. Of wire. And also, if you're the type that you know, you like measuring things, this is a really great way to figure out how much the cost of something is whenever you're making your piece. You know, right from the get-go, it's kind of like keep in chemistry labs or something. You know, write down, you know, well, I used 4 feet of this wire, and then, you know, maybe I'm probably going to cut us off just a foot of the half round, and then you can figure up your cost per foot, or even break it down to cost per inch on the wire, and then put it on a little piece of paper and keep that in the bag with it. And then you can figure out, like, it helps you kind of keep track of your materials cost, because you can't manage what you don't measure. And so I get a lot of questions about that on a pretty regular basis. So, okay, measuring off a foot. Oops, making messes. And I'm doing this tutorial in a real time with very little editing because I want to give you guys a very accurate representation of how long it can take to make one of these pendants. As far as the tools go, we will need flush cutters, flat nose pliers, round nose pliers, and probably also some bent nose, just because I really like them. And then also nylon jaw. There will be links to all the different tools and materials used down below. Let me zoom in just a little bit more for you. Get a sip of coffee. Okay, so the flat nose pliers that I'm using have very thin tips. You can see that compared to the tips on this one. These are my wire wrapping flat nose pliers. These are my chainmail flat nose pliers. So you can take a grinder and kind of shape them down a little bit more, but I got really lucky and just found some off the shelf that had a super thin tip. And what's so nice about that is it's going to let you make a really tight bend in your wire. So here we have the half round, and you can see it has a round side and a flat side. See how the light difference? This one has a lot more like contour here on the bottom, whereas the flat is shiny across the whole surface. I like to take it and establish with my pliers, round side up, and then grab with my nylon jaw pliers right next to where it's been grabbed, and then just pull it through its whole length. And that's going to remove any twists and kinks that might be there. And we're going to do this same thing to our square wire. Only this one, it doesn't really have like a top side and a bottom side. So I'm just going to grab it where it's nice and squared off. Grab it with my nylon jaw and just pull it on through. Now keep in mind, this is going to kind of work harden it a little bit, make it a little bit firmer whenever you bend it. So don't do it too much. And really, if your wire's very nice and not twisted up, this step isn't even necessary. Excuse me. Don't mean to keep coughing in your ear. It's like my throat heard me. It's like, oh, you don't want to edit, you say? Well, you have another thing coming. There we go. And it just kind of gets it straightened through, gets everything kind of on the same plane. Okay, so now we're going to take our freshly straightened out half round wire. And we'll zoom in quite a bit. And I'm going to grab it very close to the tip of my pliers. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking for a thickness on the nose of my pliers that's very similar to the 18 gauge square wire. Coming in about 8 centimeters from, or millimeters from the end, and just bending around like that. And so now from there, you can slide that over one of your wires and see how it almost fits kind of snug. Since it's a little too tight, I need to go thicker on my pliers. So we can actually just open that up, smoosh it out flat, come a little higher up, and bend around, just like that. So now, whenever we slide our wire into it, it sits right flush up against the side. And so I'm going to stack each of my 4 wires just side by side, and you could tape this. You could use a jewelry clamp. There are a couple of different tools on the market. I've actually had two different varieties very generously sent to me, but I'm tidying up and rearranging the craft room and I can't find them right this second, so we'll worry about that later. But had I had them on hand, they would have been very handy right now. So don't hesitate to use whatever tools you feel inspired to make your job a little easier. So you can see here, I've bent this back wire off towards me, and I'm pushing very snug up on everything and bringing this half round wire around. And I want to be very careful here to not put any twists into the half round wire. And so now I'm going to continue around. See how you stack them just right next to each other? Nice and tight. and doing a third rotation. I typically won't do less than 3 rotations because I do want this wrapping to be very substantial and kind of hold everything together. But you could do as many as you like, really. I think I'm going to do 5 this time. So there's 4, bringing it around. And there's my 5th one, and bringing it around. And now before cutting my wire, I'm going to come in with my nylon jaw pliers and give it a good smush. Smush. And see how that flattens it, gets it very snug up against the wire. And I'm going to snip with my flush cutters. I want the same distance coming off of this side as this one, so that looks about like that. And you could use calipers or a ruler or anything that you like to make sure that it's nice and even. And so now I'm going to come in and push those up. And I'm going to leave it like this as we come around and do the next sections. And you can also at this point determine what you would like to be the top and bottom of your stone. I think I'm going to have mine hang this way, but I think it also would look very nice hung this way. So definitely an opportunity for you to practice your artistic discretion and decide for yourself what you would like to do. Excuse me. And so now the corner is going to be happening at about here. So I want my next wrapping, like area of binding, to be about right here. So again, we're going to grab our half round wire. We're going to put a nice little bend in it with no twists or anything. Coming up about an inch or so from our last. Just gripping everything. You can see I'm using my finger to hold from the back side to hold everything stable. And then I'm going to do the same 5 rotations. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, making sure your wire's all nice and lined up. Swooping in with our, whatever these are, nylon jaw pliers. Sorry, I'm trying so hard to be professional. And my brain's just farting everywhere. So, snipping again. There we are. And so now I'm going to do the same thing, pretty equidistant, off to the other side. Again, making sure that I'm bending on the flat side, because I want the pretty half round to be on the outside of the wire. And the benefit of having the flat side is it helps to keep everything very tight and smushed. It's difficult to get this same effect with a full round wire. You can still do the wrapping, it's just, it can be a little bit more difficult to get it to sit snug and kind of stay in place. Okay, so again, pretty equidistant, and wrapping once, twice, thrice. That's the 4th, thrice, and 5 times. Now you can see here it's starting to get a little bit wonky, so we can come in and we can make sure that this is nice and flat with our nylon jaw pliers before squishing everything. We want to make sure that we have no twists, no anything like that. So I'm just going to come in and swoosh and snip. There we are. And so now we have a couple of different options. We could trim these guys about right there, like kind of right in the middle of the wrapping and everything. That way on the outside it just looks like tidy little bindings. Or we could come through and, using our round nose pliers, get kind of decorative with it and do some little spirals. And so what I'm going to do is I'm grabbing as close to the tip of the pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can and turning it onto a different plane. See, I'm putting that little twist in it. It was coming off this way. Now it's coming off like perpendicular to how it was. And that lets me grab it. Oops. And start coiling it into a cute little spiral. And really, you can do whatever you want here to make it however pretty and decorative as you like. And that one, it's protruding out a little more three-dimensionally than I would like. So again, coming back in with these pliers, smooshing it down and in. I don't want any little pokey bits. Yeah, see how that gives us a little like scroll work spiral? I'm going to demonstrate that again. So again, very, very flat is coming out. So I'm rotating my work around, grabbing it as close to the tip of the wire and as close to the tip of the pliers, and then turning it. So that's, I guess the term is perpendicular to how it was. And then coming in into a nice little spiral like that, and smoosh. There we go. Again, want to make sure there's no snaggy bits. And whenever I do them like this, I like to leave it on the outside so it can show off all that decorative work we just did. So I'm going to continue doing that to the other 4 little bits of wire that are coming off. Oops, it's okay if your pliers slip. Just lets me know that I'm getting into a bit of a rush whenever I need to slow down, be mindful of what I'm doing. Stay on camera, stay in frame, stay on target. Now I'm going to wait to smush until I get both of these ones done. There we are. I don't know if I recommend hammering this because it's going to take a lot of the mobility out of the wires and we still have a little bit of wrapping to do. So if you want to hammer it, I would hold off as of yet until we do the final shaping and then hammer away. Or you could test it out on some scrap wire and see how the spreading behaves. It's always a good idea to try out new techniques on scrap before applying them to what's going to be your finished project. Okay, now I want that in a little bit tighter to the rest of the coiling. Or wrapping rather, there we go. Okay, so now we have that bit. And I want to come in and have this center one centered up on the bottom. And so just holding everything together and bending around. Which again, doesn't always work out that smoothly, but hey, it worked this time, so. Now we're gonna take this side and I'm gonna bend that around. Now you can see it's already starting to do what we want it to do, and that's spread around the corners. And so what I'm going to do right off the bat is take our stone out and get my thumbnail, you could use like a pocket knife or something, and spread that wire away from the others on both sides. These wires are going to be our back wires, and they're always the ones that I do first. That way they'll establish the mood, and I can be like, you know, I really like that, or I don't really like that, and try something different on the front. And so I'm going to take my round nose pliers and come in here You can see I've got one nose on one side and one nose on the other side. And holding our wire form very securely, I'm actually going to zoom out so that you can see my hand positioning better and see the movement that I'm doing. I'm going from being palm up to palm down. We got a little bit of distortion, but that's okay. And on this side, I used the center mark as a reference point. My plier nose was on top. So on this side, instead of repeating the same hand movement, I'm going to mirror it. So I'm starting palm down, and I'm going to go to palm up. We're pretty close to up. And so now we can put our stone back in and flatten that down with our thumbs a bit. I'm going to zoom back in for you. And that's not my favorite. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to do another little spiral squiggle. Nope, don't like that one. So this is an excellent time to experiment. You know, try different things. Oh, I like that. So this is the kind of effect that I got by flipping the hand motion. You'll get this little bit of a wave effect if you repeat the same hand motion. Really hope that makes sense. So like if you place the pliers in like this, palm down, then you go up and place the pliers in like this, palm down, and just repeat that same motion. So I'm going to try to do more of that on the front side. And also, this could end up being a really nice freeform piece. You can also take it and keep positioning a little further. There we go. I like that better. And we still have these wires over on the side, keeping everything more or less where we would like it to be. As a little frame wire. Okay, and so now coming around onto the front. Now this is where we want to be very careful to make sure that we're not scratching up the surface of the stone. So I'm going to get my fingernail in there, pull that out just a bit from the other wires on both sides. And that gives me a little bit of room to fit my plier nose in without gouging it into the stone. There we are. Doing just a little bit this time. Do you see how I did a much smaller version of the movement on the back? And then bringing that one out. Putting my pliers in. Again, I placed this one in like that. So I'm going to place the other one in like that. And turn. And I really like the simplicity and clean lines that gives us. Now also this bottom part here is distorted a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in there with our bent nose pliers and just grab it. I'm going to move this stone out of the way. This turquoise that I'm working with is super soft, so I really don't want to risk gouging it or anything like that. And then just straighten the wire out a bit to be how I want it. And there it goes. That's nice. Now again, I'm going to remove the stone because you can see it's not quite as snug. I don't want any light coming through on the bottom there. It's a very opaque stone. I think the wire should sit quite snug to it. So I'm going to press it down to make that hopefully a little flatter. And I'm going to get a little risky here. I'm going to press it with my stone in there. Meh. Slightly better. Maybe if I take it and bend a little bit more. You can see there, it bit into my wire finish a little bit, and I really don't like that, but it's hard to take that out on the enameled wire once you do it, so just be mindful. Okay. And we can also scooch that down a little maybe. Nope. Okay. And so now I'm going to take the frontmost wire on each side. You can twist it a bit so they stay nice and parallel to the side walls. And I am going to give myself only about an inch, maybe 1.5 inches of wire snip. And I'm going to grab it as close to the tip of my pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can, and spiral in with a nice flowy organic looking spiral. There we go. I like that. And I'm going to do that same thing on the back side. Only this one's going to be much larger, I think. So I'm going to give myself at least 2, maybe 2.5 inches. And I'm going to grab as close to the tip of my pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can and try to stay in frame. Oops. And just spiraling down like that. There we are. And now I'm going to separate the frontmost and the backmost wire from on this side. And where am I going to place you? I'm just going to give myself a very small, tight spiral on this side. So I've bent it around and snipped a little further in. Grabbing with my pliers, twisting in. Now we can sneak in here with our bent nose and smush that down to be nice and flat. There we go. And then I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do that on this side. And so now we need to start thinking about where are we going to put the bail on this piece. Like, how do we think we want that? And so I'm going to keep this frontmost wire on this side kind of bent and out of the way. And so we can bring this in, and you can see where the point is on our stone, kind of the pinnacle. I'm going to insert my flat nose pliers and give myself a very sharp, defined bend on both of those wires right above the pinnacle. And then I'm going to come in, kind of let that come out of the way a bit, and I'm going to come in and do that same thing over here on this side. Just grab both of those wires very securely and give it a nice firm bend. So see how that worked? And so from here we can take more of our half round wire, and I'm going to give myself not quite 1 inch, but just a section to really pinch down here on the back. And then start twisting very securely. Bring these wires up to where they're friends with each other. And just keep making it tighter. 3, 4, and 5 rotations. We can come in with our nylon jaw pliers and give it a solid smush and a solid smush. Now these ones I am going to cut quite flush, and then use my bent nose pliers to tuck it down in between the wrapping, where you want to make sure that it's not going to poke anybody. And test it out with your finger, no pokey bits, that's excellent. Now for this part up here, I'm actually going to fan this out a little bit. So, like that. And then these two on the back side, that's where I'm going to tuck the tail from this one. So spread it, snip it, and tuck it. Just really trying my best to get that in there. And so from here we have a lot of creative options. We could go very minimalist with the bail, which, not gonna lie, can sometimes be really hard to do because when we have all this extra wire just hanging out. I think I'm going to bring this one down into a spiral on this side. So I'm just going to snip it about there, about in line with the edge of the pendant. And I save all of my little scrap pieces. And grabbing as close to the tips of both as I can. And just spiraling in. Because that's all of the scrap that you save, if nothing else, will make really great practice wire. So it's another little crazy loop. You can make much smaller loops if you don't want to cover as much of the stone, but I really like the way that the copper looks flashing on top of the turquoise. And so now from here, we could use, this is a hair stick, I'm going to use that as a mandrel. You could use an actual proper mandrel, or you could use a knitting needle or a pen, but I'm just butting it up against my wire and then bending it down. And I'm going to split the sides, one off to each direction. There we go. And then I'm actually going to make this a 4-loop bail. So bending these ones around on each side also. Bring them together. You want to try to make sure that your loops all end up about the same size. It helps the bail look a little tidier, a little more well composed, I think. Now also, I'm going to give it just a slight bend to the forward. And from here, we could do a decorative crossing. We've got one crossed over the other, crossed over this one, bring it down a bit, crossed over that one. Meh, that's quite messy, I don't like it. So we'll just bring them back out. There we go. Could bring both sides down and around to the back. Yeah, that crossing just keeps getting bulkier and bulkier, so I think I'm going to go that route, where the wire is just going to kind of spiral and cascade down around the wrapping. Then we can remove our mandrel. Now these two I'm going to stabilize just a little bit more. Oops. You can see I bent it and it twisted the mandrel with it, or the bail, so reinsert that mandrel so that it keeps everything where it's going to go. And these 2 wires, I'm going to pull around nice and tight to the back and keep them there. And these 2, I'm going to bring around to the front. And this is where we're going to start binding them off. And again, I cannot emphasize enough, there's no wrong way to do this weave. And the more you do it, the more you'll get the feel for what you like or don't like. And so just kind of sometimes let it be what it's going to be, because not every single piece comes out the way you envision it, and that can be okay. So I'm going to give us just a little bit for a nice small tight spiral. I'm going to come in and tighten that down. And I want it to sit nice and snug, like right there. There we go. And then this one, I want to sit as like a little spiral right in front of the bail. So I'm gonna give ourselves almost 2 inches. And grab it and bring it on around. Tighten it down into a little almost rosette. And then I'm going to spread the sections of our bail so it makes a nice like pillowy. And now for these 2 on the back, I'm going to do something pretty similar. I'm actually just going to tighten that one down. Give it a snip. And I'm just going to make a tight little loop. There we go. Because again, my priority here on the back is to keep it from snagging clothes or skin or anything like that. So again, snip that down. Start spiraling it in. There we go. So that's the way our back is looking. And that's the way our front is looking. And this is just one of the infinite ways that you can use this wrapping technique to frame your stones. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this tutorial. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. If you would like to tag me in pictures of your work or share it to my Facebook wall, all of my links to social media will be down below. Also, there's a link to my Patreon if you would like to be more of a part of and support all of the work that we do here on YouTube with Back to Earth Creations. Please consider joining us over there. We do behind the scenes content, weekly giveaways, digital download content, monthly craft crates, all sorts of different things, and we're adding new stuff all the time. But I really appreciate all of y'all, everybody who watches and comments and likes and subscribes and all of that, and even those of y'all who just watch and don't do anything, you just watch and then go and make stuff. I really appreciate that because I make these videos for y'all. Speaking of which, if you have any requests for future tutorials, I'd love to hear what you'd like to be working on. So be sure to let me know. But until next time, happy crafting. Bye.